Again, more practice with the leading coefficient. We're going to have 2x squared minus 11x, leave a blank, equals 7. We then have this leading coefficient, which we're going to divide through by, and that gives us x squared minus 11 halves x, leave a blank, equals 7 halves. We then have to cut in half. Now this is a little harder to cut in half, and if it's not easy to, because you have an odd number in that numerator, another rule you can say is double the denominator. What's actually happening here is you're going to 11 halves times 1 half, and you're going to get 11 fourths. Well, another way to think of that is doubling the denominator. So I'm going to have minus 11 fourths on the next row. I'm going to square it to plus 121 over 16 in that blank. So I'm going to have to add 121 over 16 over on the right hand side also. Now let's complete the square. We're going to have x minus 11 fourths quantity squared equals, okay, on the right hand side we need a common denominator, and 2 goes into 16. So down below I'm going to multiply by 8, and up above in the numerator I'm going to multiply by 8 and get 56. And adding the 56 and the 121 together, I get 177 over 16. Whew. Okay, now let's go through and square root each side of the equation. And that's going to give us just the x minus 11 quarters on the left. And looky there, the square root of 16 is 4, which is nice. Square root of 177, we'd have to do a factor tree to break that down. Let's see, 177. We know that the trick for divisibility by 3 is to add up the digits. 1 plus 7 is 15, and since 15 is divisible by 3, that number is divisible by 3. And it turns out it's 3 times 59, and that baby's not going to break down in any appreciable way for us. So we're just going to leave it as root 177. We notice we have a common denominator on both sides. We can add 11 fourths to both sides, and we're going to have positive 11 plus or minus the square root of 177 all over 4. Which is a little bit messy, but correct. Okay, I've got a surprise for you here. On the next problem, let me get this into position. We're going to solve again, but this time we're not going to have any numbers involved. It's going to be variables only. We're going to rewrite it with that c moved over to the other side of the equation. We're then going to divide off that leading coefficient because we want the x squared by itself out in front. So plus b over ax, leave a blank, equals negative c over a. Then, as we've been doing, we're going to cut this linear term in half, middle term in half, and it's kind of hard to do, but we just learned about doubling the denominator. So this is going to be b over 2a, which we're going to square and give us plus b squared over 4a squared within that blank, which we're going to add to the right hand side also. Messy as that is. Now it's time to complete the square. Put the x in front, the parentheses around it, the quantity squared. On the right hand side we need a common denominator in order to add these fractions, and a goes into 4a squared. So 4a squared will be the denominator. Now we're multiplying the denominator by 4a, so up above we multiply by 4a and get minus 4ac. And when I rewrite this all over the 4a squared, I'm going to write the b squared first minus the 4ac. Now we're at the point, let me scoot this down a little bit, where we can square root each side of the equation, messy as that may be. And square rooting the left undoes the parentheses and the quantity squared. We just get x plus b over 2a. On the right, the denominator becomes 2a also, but we cannot square root across that minus sign. So we have plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. And then we've got that common denominator of 2a, so I'm going to rewrite this on the right all over 2a. I'm subtracting off the b over 2a from both sides, so that makes this a negative b on the left, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac on the right. And this pretty much needs to be memorized because it is such an important part of all your future math classes. It has a name, and that is called the quadratic formula. And that will be the title and topic of our next video. Now I got one more type of problem I want to do. For those of you who are using Alex, there's a couple problems in here that just have you practicing with complete the square, asking you to find the value of k. Notice how 10 can cut in half to a 5, and that 5 will square and turn that k value into 25. That's all they're asking on that problem. And then this next one, sometimes it goes backwards where the k is in the middle. You unsquare the 9, so to speak, square root it to the 3, and then you say what number cut in half made that 3, go backwards and find out that that k value is 6.